Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back. It's another episode of Liam's First Look, and today we're going over UFC 291, and we have a very special guest with whom we are going to be doing it. So without further ado, let's bring in the man himself, the myth, the legend, friend of the show, Narco Cop in the building. How are you, my brother? Welcome aboard.
What's up, my man? Yeah, I was gonna do a stream today or maybe tomorrow, but you're doing one. Why not jump in here? Fuck it. Let's run it over and then do this card. I did tape really early for this one, so I'm gonna be in Vegas on Thursday for the Spence versus Crawford fight. I can't wait for that, dude. Like, it's gonna be a barn burner. I'm also gonna watch UFC 291 because it's before the card, so I'll get some of that, and then yeah, I'm ready for this card. I don't love it from a betting perspective. I had a lot more bets last week. But there's some spots I like, and there's certain props I'm waiting for because the props I haven't opened up yet.
Absolutely. We have a great combat sports weekend. Come to think of it, right? We have not only that huge boxing match that you're talking about, we have Bellator versus Ryzen. So there's a lot of different options in terms of betting combat sports this weekend. And, I'm definitely going to be looking. I don't normally bet on Bellator, but Bellator versus Ryzen, I feel like is a fun event, kind of worth putting a little bit of attention towards. I like the matchup that they have at the top there, Sabatello and Magomedov. So a lot of really strong offerings around the combat sports world. And UFC 291 is one of them, right? Maybe not the very best that they have to offer on pay-per-view, but still quite a stacked card throughout in terms of that main card depth. Just a lot of quality fights, high-level fighters. So excited to see that overall. Starting with the main event, my man, we're talking about Dustin the Diamond Poirier and Justin Gaethje, two elite lightweights, two guys that like to go out there, put on exciting fight of the night type bangers. And a lot of people here are talking about playing overs. Which for me was a little bit shocking, right? That's what I was seeing on Twitter yesterday. And I was a little bit blown away because I've been betting like system bets on the unders for the Dustin Poirier McGregor trilogy. It cashed every time, the under 2.5 rounds there. Not always in the favor of our guy, Mr. McGregor, who we had to wear the sweater today because he finally got a win on the Ultimate Fighter. But in any case, what we're looking at here is a guy in Justin Gaethje who, in my humble opinion, as a Rafael Fiziev better, maybe got away with one in a very close fight there. I thought that he definitely, gave up that third round, but the 10-8 round 3 really didn't register with me. I didn't see that when I watched it. I'll have to rewatch and see if maybe I changed my mind there. But one of the things that's going to make this a fascinating conversation is I've been organizing my notes. I was telling Narco about this before the show. I was kind of getting ready as the first look is normally done, whereas he's already done his tape study. So I'm curious to hear what you have to say after coming out of your tape study here, and then I'll give you my initial first look, which I did share with you a little bit before we got going.
Yeah, so for me on this fight, it's an interesting fight, man. It's going to be a banger, no doubt about it, right? Like two guys that come forward. They don't really like taking the back foot, and they're just going to swing, man. And if I had an over on this fight, I would really be sweating. I know the first time around, he ended it in the fourth. But this is the type of fight where your ass cheeks are clenched when you have an over on this. They literally are. Like, you're not going to feel comfortable at any point of this fight because these two guys are just going to go at it. I mean, Poirier hits hard. Justin throws very hard as well. And when I watched their first fight, I kind of mentioned this to you, and I think it's kind of important, Justin Gaethje got off his calf kicks. I mean, he got them off left, right, and center. He landed a bunch of them. That's a big weapon for him. And he literally chopped Poirier's legs, man. And Poirier was limping in that fight. And for me, like I said to you, it's like that's a very good scenario for Justin Gaethje, right? If I told you he chops Poirier's legs, he should probably get the upper hand. He's got better movement. Dustin can't really sit down on his punches as much when your legs are chopped off. And what happens? He still knocks him out in the fourth round, right? So for me, it's like, not that it's a red flag. It's just that a fight went pretty much how Justin wanted it to go, yet he still gets knocked out in the fourth round, right? Now, he hurt he hurt Poirier. I believe it was either round 2 or 3. He kind of wobbled him there against the fence. And Justin Gaethje, to his credit, he throws hard. He's a tough, very, very tough guy. He takes a lot of shots. But, at the end of the day, too much damage is not good, right? This guy's been in so many wars, even the Fiziev fight, right? Just coming off another war. And this guy just keeps on going war to war to war to war. Now, Poirier has been in some wars himself, but there's also been some easy fights here. Conor McGregor fights, there wasn't much coming back. I mean, yeah, he got landed on a little bit, but I wouldn't consider that a war, right? So the thing here is it's like one guy got the way he wanted the fight to go the first time out, yet he still gets knocked out. Now he's coming back. He's eaten a lot more damage since that fight. And now he's facing a guy in Poirier who for me now is probably going to make the right adjustments. I think he's the more cerebral fighter of the two as well. I think we kind of mentioned he might actually have a grappling edge here if he wants it. And Gaethje, as good of a wrestler as he is, he just doesn't really mix much takedowns. So I do side with Poirier. I'm just one of those people that, big UFC pay-per-view. The line's been out for a month. I think it's very sharp at this point. I'm probably just going to stay away. Maybe I degen some Dustin Poirier because I'm going to be watching the fight in Vegas. So I do favor that side, though. I like Justin Poirier in this fight.
Yeah, man, I tend to agree with you here, Narco. When I look at the fight, number one, what's Justin Gaethje's biggest advantage over most lightweight opponents? It's the fact that he could throw a ridiculous amount of volume. He goes out there, he's averaging 7+ significant strikes per minute. But then you go back and you look at the stats against Dustin Poirier, and it just didn't play out that way, right? Dustin Poirier ends up landing more than him. He's got, I would argue, better defense and offense that works together. I feel like Gaethje, when he commits to more defensive movement, I feel like that kind of mutes his offense a little bit. But I feel like when he's being super offensive, it just leaves him there to get countered. And guys like Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier that can kind of meet you in that war, that aren't afraid to go into those deep waters, right? Those guys are really hard to beat by just out-toughing them. And that's what he did to a lot of guys, right? He took beatdowns from Luis Palomino back in the day, but he was giving it back to him the whole time, right? And he's staying in the face and proving I'm tougher than you. But eventually you start doing that, and Michael Johnson makes it so you're this much tougher than him, right? It was a very close fight right out the gate. It kind of let him know what time it was. And a lot of guys in the UFC have tested Justin Gaethje. So I think Gaethje's a fun fighter, but he's a guy who's concerned about highlight reels. I think that, when you look at overall Dustin Poirier's body of work, he's a guy who's concerned with his legacy. He's a guy who's concerned with winning the big fights that matter, winning defining trilogies. I mean, the fact that he beat Conor McGregor, years later, big psychological hurdle to overcome. A lot of distractions there. Once you win that rematch, it's easy to get fat and happy and say, hey, I did it. I got it all, and then blow it in the third one. And instead he looked, even better. So I just felt like Dustin Poirier is a guy who's continued to put it all together. Think about the Eddie Alvarez fight. Very close, back and forth, goes to a no contest. But then they do it again, and he beat the absolute tar out of that man. And that's a world-class fighter. So I think Dustin Poirier, you don't want to keep getting multiple cracks at this guy. You can maybe catch him once, right? Y'all think Michael Johnson's getting him if they do it again? Maybe. But I also think Dustin Poirier has put it together since then, right? So I think that this is a guy, continues to get better. You don't want to have to fight this man twice. I think Mike Brown, underrated coach, right? How could you say that about one of the best coaches in the game? But it's like people stop talking about him and talk about these other guys. I feel like Mike Brown right now, still one of the best in the game. ATT, still a force to be reckoned with. So until proven otherwise, I think it's Dustin Poirier this weekend.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely love it, brother. So with that being said, let's move to this co-main event and see if we can find some dissension here. We've got the eminently experienced Jan Blachowicz, Polish power, 40 years of age here, taking on 36-year-old Alex Boatan Pereira, hands of stone. One of the scariest punchers we've ever seen come to MMA. That LFA knockout that he got, I believe over Powell, the gentleman's name was, sickening, right? Just horrifying to watch. You're like, wow, how much did that guy get paid to take that knockout? Not enough, no matter how much it was. In any case, You're looking at a guy here in Jan Blachowicz, very proven, went out there against Ankalaev in his last fight, still put on a pretty decent account of himself, all things considered, especially for his age, but did slow down a little bit over the course of that fight. What makes this a more interesting note is that this is going to be a 15-minute contest, not a 25-minute bout. I think that does give him a little bit more of a chance to win. The older you get, the harder it is to pace yourself over these 5-round contests. But we've seen a lot of guys like Glover Teixeira, when it's 3-round contests or when they get the early finish, they can still go out there and compete with these young guys. So I think that that's how Jan Blachowicz has to approach this. I think he's going to want to try and win the early rounds. I think he's going to want to try and blanket this guy, grab a hold of him, take him to the ground. Because, Narco, you know as well as I do, standing on the feet with Alex Pereira is a dangerous place to be for any human being living. It's not to say that he can't take damage. He's not immortal. He's not invincible. We saw in his last fight, he could get knocked out, right? He's still a man that bleeds normal blood. But he is the more dangerous and more powerful guy. I think he is the more powerful puncher of the two guys. I think he's the more powerful kicker and a little bit more dynamic of the kickers as well in this matchup. So I think Jan Blachowicz, if he turns his brain on, is going to come out here with shoes and headgear, my man. Because the thing is, we haven't seen him tested by real wrestling and grappling at this point in the UFC. Sean Strickland, probably the best guy he's gone against, didn't have an attempt, didn't get into any wrestling grappling positions. Andreas Michailidis, questionable black belt level, was able to go out there, get some takedowns, wasn't really able to secure much or do much with it. But again, is he supposed to be able to? He's not on the same athletic level. That was at 185 pounds where Pereira is massive. Adesanya, was able to take him down with some bogus stuff, hold him down with some very basic wrestling, right? Some stuff that maybe wouldn't fly at the junior high level here in the States. So I think that when you're looking at these two guys, that's also in the later rounds of a championship fight. I think Alex is going to be prepared here for some wrestling offense from Blachowicz, but is he going to be able to stop it consistently over the course of this fight? I'm interested to find out, because I'll tell you what, man, I took a bath on Israel Adesanya when he went against Jan Blachowicz. I thought it was the easiest matchup for me to read on paper. I'm like, man, one guy's faster. He's going to go out there, get to work. Yeah, he's a little bit smaller, but it's going to be a fight, mostly plays out on the feet. Boy, I was wrong about that, right? Jan Blachowicz certainly knew what to do that night. He went out there and executed accordingly. Wasn't the most aggressive guy on top, but he did just hold position, consolidate, and forced his opponent into a position where he had to change his game plan to win. He couldn't do it. I think in this fight, Pereira could just run out of time. I do think a lot of people are assuming this fight's going to go under, which I do think there's a live possibility of that. But I also think there's a chance that, this could be Blachowicz trying to grind his way to the ugliest decision you've ever seen, because he's 40 years of age and he's trying to get a title shot, right? It's not about being pretty and whatever. It's about getting the win that puts you in the next spot. But to the point that we were having, to the point of conversation we had before this could be a marketable opportunity. If Alex Pereira goes out there, does what Izzy failed to do, takes that title, and now Izzy is left, with that feeling of insecurity that he needs to go up and take that title from him at 205, that gets Pereira the fight that he wants back. So huge motivation spot for both guys. I'm curious, how do you handicap this one? Yeah, man.
I got an early line at plus 128 on Alex Pereira. I thought the line was off when I saw it. I didn't think Jan should be a favorite here, honestly. Not in the sense that, Jan doesn't have a path here. Like, yeah, for sure. He hits hard. He's got very good calf kicks. We saw it in Ankalaev fight. He has decent wrestling. Like, he can get takedowns. We saw it in the Izzy fight. There was some factors here why I actually do favor Alex Pereira in this fight. For one, the Izzy fight was in the Apex. I don't know if people know that, but I think that's very important. We're in a bigger ring here. We're in a ring where Alex can move. Takedowns for Blachowicz are not going to be easy. And when I watched a guy, when he actually wrestles, so every single one of the takedowns outside of the last one against Izzy when he was already dead tired was literally Izzy missing with a wild punch right into a body lock and a takedown. Both those first two takedowns were exactly the same thing, where Izzy overthrew, he missed, Jan ducked down, got him in a body lock, and just put him down. The third one was kind of like a bull rush, double leg, and he got him down. Now, that's not to say that he can't get Pereira down. Of course he can, and I don't think Pereira has the best takedown defense. But I think the big cage actually helps Pereira a lot here. The other thing that I think is very, very important is when you watch Jan against Rakic, right? The Rakic fight. Rakic did land a lot of calf kicks on Jan and actually had him hurting a little bit. He did check one of them. I don't remember which one, but I think that might have played into how he blew out his knee later on. The thing here is the weapon that he has, and Jan's weapon, big weapon, is a calf kick. I don't want anybody to think that not. That's a huge weapon of his. And I think that kind of gets nullified here because Alex Pereira is a Muay Thai guy. He's going to check those calf kicks. He's not very heavy on that lead leg. He picks it up a lot. And I think the return calf kicks from him are very important. Like you could see it in the second Izzy fight. He absolutely chopped Izzy's leg and made Izzy go southpaw. Like Izzy fought southpaw when he landed that shot. Okay. So is Jan going to be able to fight southpaw if he gets his lead leg kicked off? I don't see it. I don't think he can. And then the other point is, Izzy facing a guy like Izzy for Pereira, he meets him there with size, with reach. I don't think Jan meets him there with size. The other important aspect for me is I do think 85 was bad for Pereira. This guy walks around, when you listen to his thing, he walks around at 230, Liam. It's 45
massive
pounds.
cut.
Dude, that's a 45-pound weight cut for this dude. He's literally depleting himself to get to 185. I think 205 is a lot more natural for this guy. When you look at him next to Strickland in those pictures, like, how can you possibly think these guys are in the same weight class at 85? Like, this guy is way bigger than Strickland, right? So for me, I understand the point of the takedown aspect. I just don't think, people seem to think that the striking is close. I don't think the striking is close here. I think Pereira's faster. I think his calf kicks are going to be a big thing here in this fight. And I think his checking of calf kicks is going to be very important here. So the big cage, him being the younger fighter, there's a lot of things that I like on the Pereira side. So for me, I kind of cap it at Pereira minus 150 area. I know he doesn't have the grappling upside, but I do think he has a lot of things that are going his way in this particular matchup here.
I like where your head's at, man. A little bit of an unconventional take. I do think a lot of people are going to rely on the wrestling. The one thing I hate is that he's 4 years older, right? I don't love to bet on fighters like that. The other thing is there's some unknowns here that should probably push this line closer to 50-50. So if you're betting the plus money side there, now you're probably looking at a fight that closes, pick 'em, in my view. I do think that this is going to close in the pick 'em range, maybe a slight favorite on either side, but I did find one question here really curious. The Becca 01 says, do you think elevation will affect either fighter? And if so, I'm adding this editorial. If so, who do you think it would affect more? I kind of feel like, over 15 minutes, maybe it won't be as big of a deal here. But if I did think it was going to affect somebody more, probably the 40-year-old just by, logic. But that's my gut lean. What do you think about that one, Narco?
I tend to lean that side. I think it affects Jan. And when you watch him in some of his fights, he's Ankalaev fight, right? He really, and let's be honest, he completely chopped both of Ankalaev's legs off, but he was completely exhausted in round 4 and 5. Like he got, Ankalaev got one takedown in each round and it was over. Like he couldn't even do anything. He was on his back the whole rounds. So there's a twofold as far as cardio, in my opinion. So Pereira went 5 rounds with Izzy, and he looked pretty good going 5 rounds, right? At 85. Again, we talked about the massive weight cut. I think that hurts his cardio, right? I think 205 helps his cardio, actually. So the fact that he's at 205, I think helps his cardio. The fact that it's 3 rounds, obviously, I don't think it's going to kill any of these guys. I don't think it's going to really hamper them. But like you mentioned, one guy's 40 years old. One guy's getting way up there in age. And, obviously Pereira's not a spring chicken. He's 36. But when you talk about MMA years and obviously he's been in a lot of kickboxing fights as well. But I kind of think the mileage is a lot more on the Blachowicz side. Yeah,
I mean, Blachowicz has definitely taken, worse and more glaring finishing losses in his MMA career than even, we've seen from Pereira across all his combat sports career. Because truly, I remember doing the due diligence before the Izzy fight. I did end up betting Izzy in the second iteration. But the first time, I kind of thought that Izzy was going to win that one too and got burnt there. So for me, just feel like this guy Pereira, better than I gave him credit for when he first came to the UFC. I did bet him small against Sean Strickland, but I didn't have the confidence to go big there. That was a plus money number. Probably won't see that again against a quality fighter like that. So it's really, for me, this is a hard fight to call, but again, can't ever blame a guy for taking the plus money stab here. So I'll probably look at the prop market here, see if there's anything interesting that I could delve into. Please go ahead.
Yeah, just one more thing. Like, I know people are counting on Jan to grapple, and I understand. Of course, that's the best way to win here. But guys, also you have to remember it took him almost 3.5, 4 rounds to attempt his first takedown against Izzy, and that was off a missed punch. That wasn't where he tried to actually get a takedown. It's a missed punch right into a body lock to a takedown. So, we historically, of late, we really haven't seen Jan proactively grapple. So, maybe it changes here, and it should. If he wants to win the fight, it should.
Yeah, but the one thing I would point out too is you look at the guys he's been fighting, right? He fights a Rakic, probably a difficult guy for him to out wrestle. Truthfully, like Rakic, just more physical, a little bit bigger. And then you look at a Glover Teixeira. I mean, Glover worked him like a part-time job on the mat. I bet Glover there. He was plus 205 or something. I think I had Glover ITD. I think I called Glover by sub. When you look at Jan Blachowicz, I think the truth is on the top position, he's a fine grappler, right? He looks like his belt. But on the bottom position, to your point, you were saying the cardio. I don't even know how much of that is cardio and how much of that is just him being a fish off his back. Dude, he got can opener, passed easily, and then finished. It's just like, it was a horrible look. And he had neck pain and injuries. That's the cost of fighting at 40, right? So it's like, that's the one thing here too, is if I'm being asked to lay minus 120 on a guy who has literally quit in the first round, basically, against Glover Teixeira, and I know the fight lasted longer, but it was mere formalities. It's like, from a can opener, it hurt him so bad that the guy couldn't move his neck for the rest of the fight. Again, Jan Blachowicz, great fighter, fun guy, love his style. But until he flips to plus money, and unless he flips to plus money here, no way I could get behind a 40-year-old here at slight chalk. In a volatile division like light heavyweight, division where I've had some ups and downs betting, but I have had some profitability over time. And I don't think that the path to profitability at light heavyweight is bet and chalk more often than not, just because it's a volatile weight class. Pick your spots, and I see where you're going with this Alex Pereira spot. Speaking of Pereiras, there's another one. One of these things is not like the other. We got Michel Pereira here taking on Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. And Michel Pereira, a little bit more of the fun style, a little bit more of that action. Got knocked out by Dusko Todorovic, if you want to start drawing these distinctions, between him and the other Pereira. On the other side here, we got Wonderboy. Good fighter, fun fighter. Kind of been matchmaking himself a little bit in the media recently, like no Shavkat Rakhmonov. I'm not trying to get subbed. Just kind of making some smart decisions. I think at a certain point in your career, you really can't be doing, any kind of fight. I'll take on anybody. I'll be a nice guy about it. You got to make some executive decisions. And I think he wanted a fight that at least will be fun and winnable. But the one thing I will hearken people back to is that he has dropped the ball before in fights where people thought he was clearly going to run away with it because he's got Anthony Pettis of all people in front of him, right? And Anthony Pettis is a smaller guy. And Anthony Pettis did what? Chopped him down with leg kicks and then eventually finished him, right? Hit him with a huge punch that he never saw coming. He reacted to too slowly. His hands were down at his sides and he got blasted. That was years ago, right? And now we're dealing with Michel Pereira, who does random movements, who's going, ba, da, da, dance, wah! And then he just throws the hardest punch you've ever seen twice around. So I don't know that he's the best and most effective fighter in the UFC, but I think, number one, he does some things good optically, like big moments, big swinging, going for one big takedown to seal a round, things like that. I think he kind of understands the game a little bit better than when he first came into the UFC, especially. First, he was like, let me just be a showman. Let me just do this. And then people basically gave it back to him, like, bro, if that's what it's going to be, keep that shit out of here. And then he started coming out here with more serious fights and game plans. I thought he won the Chaos Williams fight, and I thought that was a little bit of a step in the right direction for him. So for me, I'm looking at a guy like Michel Pereira, and I don't like that the number has come down so much, right? I was looking at the plus 175 earlier this week and kind of doing a little bit of the chin stroke, and it's come down so significantly here that I probably just end up staying away from this. I do think that there's some intrigue for me on the fight maybe not going. I feel like there's a potential for these two guys to get into contentious striking exchanges. Wonder Boy, the one thing I don't like is he's not a guy who normally puts his foot on the gas. He's almost too nice about it, where he'll hit guys with huge shots and just let him back up. Like, hey, you still okay, buddy? Like, bang, bang, 2 more. But I feel like Pereira would be the opposite, right? I think if he gets this guy hurt or something, he'll grab a hold of him. He'll go 10-finger guillotine. I don't think he'll give a rat's ass. If he can finish him, I think he'll take it. So that's the thing that makes me lean a little bit more towards his side. He's a little younger, a little bit more piss and vinegar, a little bit more aggressive. But the skills, I think, are with Wonder Boy here. How do you feel about this one, Narco?
Yeah, this is another one. This is where, one I got in on that is kind of going against me. When Wonder Boy came down to about 164, I didn't think it was going to come down any more than that. And I'm like, you know what? Now is probably a good time for me to jump on Wonder Boy when, and this is obviously after taping. And, I mean, do I feel great about playing a 40-year-old? Of course not. I mean, I don't think it's a long-term winning strategy to bet 40-year-olds, right? In MMA, particularly. But, there's a couple of reasons why I played him here in this particular spot. And one is, 6 months ago or whatever, 7 months ago, Strickland fight. The Holland fight. He did look good. He lost round 1. He got wobbled in round 1. And let's be honest, if Holland hits you on the feet, he's knocking a lot of people out. So props to Thompson for taking all that. It was a lot of punishment too. And still staying in the fight. So, then he wins round 2 convincingly, and then he's winning round 3 pretty convincingly, and then Holland breaks his hand somewhere in round 3. I don't know. I think it was from a kick. But then Thompson completely dominates him, right? And obviously he's fighting with one arm, and props to Holland. He's a super tough guy. Now he's a bozo as well, right? He lets him up 2 different times when he should have just stayed on top, and probably the fight plays out completely differently. The thing with Pereira is, for one, I honestly don't expect this guy to grapple. Now, when you look at this guy, has he gotten takedowns? Yes, he's gotten a pretty good amount of takedowns, to be honest. But his control is god-awful. He doesn't control anybody. He couldn't control Nico Price. He couldn't control Fialho. He couldn't control anybody. He's taken a lot of people down. He just doesn't have good control when he takes you down. So for me, it's like, okay, maybe he does land a takedown or 2 here against Thompson. I just don't think there's going to be any control. Now, people are saying he looked awful against Belil. He looked awful against Burns. But you guys got to understand, those guys are very high-level wrestler grapplers, right? Pereira's just not that guy. If you're going to put him in the same category with those guys, you're highly mistaken. It's just, they're completely different type of wrestler grapplers. So,
they just fought for a number 1 contendership, to your point, right? Like, those are literally 2 guys who are at the upper echelon of the division.
Yeah. So, and then when I go back, Liam, and I watched this fight against Ponzinibbio, who honestly, Ponzinibbio, it's like a ghost of Ponzinibbio from old. It's just not the same guy. And honestly, when I watch that fight, I do think Pereira lost the fight. You honestly look at it. I think Pereira won round 1. He loses round 2 clearly. And then I think he loses round 3, but somehow they give it to him in a split decision, right? And it's like, when I look at Thompson, he's mainly losing to grapplers, wrestlers, the Tyrone Woodleys, the Burns, like we mentioned, the Belil Mohammeds. The 2 losses that were not to wrestlers was Darren Till and Anthony Pettis fight, where he completely get ran. And he did not look good. I don't know what the deal was in the Pettis. But historically looking, after Pettis, right, he beat one of the best strikers in the game in Jeff Neal, and he dominated Jeff Neal, right? He didn't just beat that
4 units, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson,
yeah,
minus
he
104.
didn't just beat Jeff Neal. He dominated Jeff Neal in that fight. So, we can look at those fights and say they were bad, but then afterwards he dominates Vicente Luque. He dominates Jeff Neal. And I'm looking at it and saying, now, Michel Pereira is just not on these guys' level. He's not on Jeff Neal's level, because if honestly, if Jeff Neal was to fight Pereira right now, I'd put a lot of money on Jeff Neal at a decent price, right? So I just don't think Thompson's shot yet. watching that Holland fight, I think he still looks good. Now, could this be the fight where he goes downhill? And that's the scary part, right? 40 years old. Like, there's going to be a turning point. Where is it? Is it this one? And it could be. And I could be playing with fire here at minus 164, which now I'm getting, reverse CLV. But he's just a better fighter. Thompson really has some very good wins in his career, even of late. Like I said, a couple of years ago, Jeff Neal. I mean, even the Holland fight. I mean, what do we line Holland against Pereira? And Thompson looked really good in that fight outside of round one. So, I like the Thompson side. I see the Pereira and Pereira. The difference is with Pereira lately, it's not the old Pereira. It's not the wild man, flying knees, spinning kicks. It's just not. Watch his tape. And that's why his cardio is better as well. So he's a smarter fighter, but he's kind of low volume. He's dancing around a lot. And the thing is, he's going to play a kicking game with probably the best kicker in the UFC. So it's like, I don't know. Maybe I'm overlooking the fact that he can grapple a lot here, and I'm going to get burned maybe by that and maybe the 40-year-old theme. But I like Thompson in this spot, man. I think it's a good fight for him.
Yeah, I think stylistically you hit a lot of the same notes that I would see here, but it's a little bit more of that theoretical upside on just a guy who's 10 years younger, hoping that he comes in a little bit better. The other guy comes in a little bit worse. They meet at the right time, and you could get the bet across the finish line. But yeah, I do think that from a skill standpoint, Wonderboy Thompson's just a little bit better. Your point, the write-up I had for that Jeff Neal fight said, I like Wonderboy to be more patient, polished striker in a fight primarily won or lost on the feet. So in this fight, you have to ask yourself, do you think it's primarily won or lost on the feet? And I think the other question you got to ask yourself is, how likely do you think Michel Pereira is to score a knockdown in this fight? Because I think if the answer is unlikely, then I think that you would probably want to be on Thompson more often than not here. But I think if you expect him to get a knockdown, he's never been knocked down in the UFC. The last knockout loss he had was pre-UFC as well. And he's not a guy that's prolific with his knockdowns in the UFC either. But he does have some weird, near finishing moments that he's had in fights, including that Nico Price fight where I thought he should have been disqualified, Narco. He literally did a flying backflip to the head. And it's like the referee was so impressed. He just watched it happen and just laughed along with him. So, I mean, at a certain point, I think the guy has the fan reaction that helps him a little bit too. And what kind of has made me think he's a more credible threat is even in that Pons fight where I agree with you. It's right within the margins, right? That third round was razor thin and probably Pons deserved it on a little more effort. Plus he's an OG, but at the end of the day, he went over 100 significant strikes there. And that's something we hadn't seen from him before. So if he can continue to push that kind of pace, I do think that will change his fortunes in this division. You just can't be a guy that can't go out there and match people on volume at 170. It's not going to work. So I think that, if he can match volume here with a guy 10 years older, there is a chance he just memes a knockout. But to your credit, the guy more skilled here who can win minutes more reliably on the feet, I think that's Wonderboy. So fair play, my man.
Yeah, I might get burned here, honestly. I could get burned, but, watching tape, I have to go with what I see, in my eyes and how I feel like, you're absolutely right. One guy is a lot younger, and I can't deny that point. And that's the most scariest. If you told me this is Wonderboy at 35 even, I'm probably smashing this minus 164. But obviously he's not. He's 40 years old.
Absolutely. But to his credit, he's still training with good guys. Looking through a quick Instagram stock, he's got Brian Battle, Weidman in the crew, Tom Lane. So getting good work in with guys that can wrestle. And then on top of that, getting work in with guys like Brian Battle who are just cardio machines. So I feel like if you're trying to work on your pace at 170 and you got Brian Battle in the room, you're going to do just fine. So next up, my man. This is a fight that is almost sad to discuss, really. We got Tony Ferguson taking on Bobby Green here. And my brother, I don't have the strongest thoughts on this one. I'll tell you this. Laying Bobby Green at minus 375, not a good idea long-term against anybody, really, because sometimes Bobby doesn't put himself in a great position to win, does a little bit of talking, a little bit of shimmying and shaking. And even when a fight is going beautifully, right, like the Drew Dober fight, I thought he was kind of just walking him down, looking great there. And then all of a sudden he dies, right? And think about the Islam Makhachev fight where he really offered no resistance, right? He just got taken to the ground. My man was like, yeah, give me the check. All right, we're good. And that for me was just a little bit different than what we used to see from Bobby Green. You know, I feel like he's at a certain point in his career where he likes going out there, putting on a fun show. He could still box people up, but I just don't know that he's as committed to winning, as committed to fighting as hard for the 15 minutes as he used to be. That's my honest assessment. As a huge Bobby Green fan, bet him against Nasrat, bet him against a bunch of guys where I thought, you know, it doesn't matter what the age is, right? To your point about the last fight, it's just skills, right? And I just thought he was going to box the shit out of that guy. He did. So you look at these kind of fights and, you know, do I expect Bobby Green boxes the teeth off of Tony Ferguson? I mean, yeah, I do. Tony used to be a very good boxer, but he's gotten very slow, stationary. I felt like Justin Gaethje kind of beat the life out of him. Don't even mean to make light of it. Just horrific, right? One of the things that the Apex has done is kind of open up the eyes of some people to how much damage fighters take in these fights when there's not people yelling and screaming and making a fuss. Dude, Tony Ferguson sounded like he was a slab of beef getting hit in a Rocky film. By Justin Gaethje, and it was happening for 25 full minutes. It was irresponsible that they kept that fight going, in my view, to the 5th round. Nobody did him any favors there, not his corner, not himself, not the referee. So I think that when you look at Tony Ferguson's career since, is it any surprise that it's looked the way that it has? He hasn't looked like the same guy, hasn't looked like he's been, you know, trying his best out there, to tell you the truth. And I said on James' show last night, I was talking to Lucrative Buy. I said to him yesterday, I honestly felt like the Nate fight looked like a work, dude. It did not even feel like an honest fight to me. The way that he shot in for that takedown, does that look like Tony Ferguson, bro? Like, does that look like a guy who wrestled at the college level? The way he taps to a guillotine when he doesn't tap to his arm getting completely turned inside out.
That was the most. I mean, come on, dude. You got your arm snapped off and you didn't tap. You're tapping to that one? It's ridiculous.
At 2:09 on the clock. That's bro, it's an insult to my intelligence, to tell you the truth. And I just was like, I was like, no matter what happened there, I will not be betting on Tony Ferguson in fights moving forward. I just won't do that. So wish him the best. He could win here as an underdog, right? He's a big plus money price. This is not the kind of fight that I want to invest in personally. I feel like both guys a little bit past their best. But what we've seen from both guys recently is like Bobby Green was out there boxing up Drew Dober before Matt Frevola was able to put the finishing touches on him, like put a lot more dents in the chin of Drew Dober before that fight. Whereas Tony Ferguson has been, you know, the other end of the barrel for a lot of guys at lightweight in these previous fights. 5 losses in a row after the longest win streak in lightweight history. That's not an accident in my view. So not excited to see this one, to tell you the truth. How about you, Narca?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the same boat. Like, how could you play Bobby Green minus 430? This guy fucking around in fights. To be fair, like, I don't even think he has one knockout, and that was against Ali Cuenta that literally came in for a check. Like, let's be honest. Like, he came in, he was done with fighting. He wanted to be a realtor. Boom, boom, boom. He's out of there. Boom. He doesn't have any more knockouts. You know, the last one, it was a headbutt. Let's be honest. He knocked Jared Gordon out with a headbutt first. And the other thing is that's very telling is Jared Gordon was actually piecing him up on the feet before that headbutt. Jared Gordon was winning that fight before he got headbutt. So I can't lay minus 430 with Bobby Green. Do I think he's going to win? Of course, because I think Tony Ferguson is done. If you look at his Instagram, I got some news for you if you want to hear real news. He actually is attending Harvard somehow now. He got accepted.
Harvard Business School.
Yeah. He's all proud of it. He's taking pictures with all these people at Harvard Business School. And
I'm happy for him, dude. He honestly, if anybody needs to move the hell on from MMA, it is Tony Ferguson, bro.
Bro, and then if you look at his Instagram, it's hilarious. Like, I'm hanging out with real fighters, and it's like 2 old guys, and it's like, what the fuck's going on? Who's this guy training with? He's training like in the garage. He's completely. I mean, I'm not even joking. I honestly think the guy has CTE up there or something's going on. Like, and it's sad to say, but it's the truth. Like, you look at some of his shit on Instagram, it's just like, come on, dude. So yeah, it's complete pass. I don't even want to talk about this fight because it's not a fight that I really even want to see. I don't even know why they made this fight, to be fair.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Maybe this was the result of a cancellation. I'm looking to see. No, it was not.
Wow, they just made this stupid fight. I have no idea why.
I guess they couldn't run the Jared Gordon fight back quick enough. But Either way, man, yeah, this is a fight we can quickly move off of. And we can move to the next fight here, man. Michael Chiesa taking on Kevin Holland. Speak of the devil, right? Kevin Holland back to get after it here at the 170-pound class and taking on a talented grappler here in Michael Chiesa. Showed off a half decent boxing game against Sean Brady, but really his striking's nothing to write home about. Seems a little bit panicky on the feet, always has. And his grappling is also a little bit panicky, right? Like, think about that Vicente Luque fight where he's having all the success in the world, getting to every position he wants, but because he faced some resistance, he found a way out of the fight. You could see the exact same pattern emerge in the Kevin Lee fight. So when you've submitted Beneil Dariush, what are we going to say except you're obviously a very elite grappler and your offense is 100% capable of submitting any UFC lightweight. And besides that, though, you've now moved up to 170. Your game hasn't quite translated as much there, beating the Neil Magnies of the division, who I always describe affectionately as fishes, right? It's like, that's not the same kind of deal, in my view, as if you were able to beat somebody like Kevin Holland. Because the truth is, Kevin gets ragged on for his wrestling and his grappling. I think at 170, it's a lot more formidable. I think at 185, it was just guys who were able to take him down and lay on him. I bet that game plan many times. Derrick Brunson, my guy, at plus 150, Marvin Vettori, these kind of guys where it's just like, of course they're going to go out there and take him down. They're way bigger, stronger, and they don't want to mess with this guy on the feet. Because the thing about Kevin Holland that people forget is that on the feet, he's extremely dangerous, to your point. He has big power in his hands. He's got a lot of speed. He's been hurt many times, and he's got decent recoverability as well. So I feel like what we've seen from Kevin Holland is, I hated that Wonder Boy fight, right? That made me think that he's just a complete moron. But also, he's a guy who's about his bag. He's a guy who's about his money. And I think he knows that every so often he's got to win, remind people he's good, he's scary, he's dangerous. Then he goes, gets the check. He goes, smokes a lot of reefer, chills out, takes the fight on short notice, loses that one. And I don't think he's trying to be a champion, but I do think he knows that his bread is buttered by winning a couple of these fights in big, devastating fashion. I think Michael Chiesa is a guy he can beat. I think Michael Chiesa is a guy he can finish. I think he could hurt him on the feet. I think he can grapple with him. That's the God's honest truth. I think Chiesa could take him down, but I think if he does that, then he is going to be in dangerous positions. Kevin Holland got out-scrambled, outworked by Khamzat Chimaev, lost the fight there. Unfortunate, turn of events, right? Went from a fight where probably had a more winnable fight against the guy who got submitted by Neil Magny, and then instead he ends up going against Khamzat Chimaev on short notice at 180 pounds. No one's idea of a good Saturday night. So I think that for Kevin Holland, he's a guy who's fallen on a lot of grenades. He's taken a lot of hard fights for the UFC. You've got a guy who's like half out of the game as a commentator, who's basically acknowledged as much in interviews. I feel like Kevin Holland's going to steamroll this guy, to tell you the God's honest truth. How do you feel about this one?
Yeah, this is the one. I honestly don't like us. I didn't like a side. I just went with the under 2.5. I mean, I can't believe it's blown out this much, but I got minus 115 when it initially dropped on BetOnline, and I just thought the line was way off because I think this is a binary fight. I honestly think, if Chiesa gets it to the ground and he gets his back, because he's very good when he has your back, and his rear naked choke is really fucking good. We can ask Beneil Dariush. And, two of Trailblazers, submission losses are rear naked chokes. One by Brandon Allen, obviously good grappler, and also Rafael Lovato, who's a really good grappler.
And both at 85. And in that fight with Brandon Allen, he was super competitive. That was the one thing I just wanted to point out. But continue.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I do think if he gets to the back, Chiesa, I think he's really good with those rear naked chokes, and I think he can sub Holland there. But as long as this fight's standing, I don't think Chiesa's surviving, dude. I honestly don't. He's just not a very good striker. Yeah, he outstruck, Sean Brady and made, bloodied up Brady there. But, Holland's just a really good striker. He's long as shit. And I don't think Chiesa takes punches very well, to be honest. So I kind of feel like it's a binary fight. Another very important aspect, actually, you said he can grapple with him, and I kind of agree with you. The one very important aspect is the darts from Kevin Holland's really good. He has long arms, right? Club and sub can be there for him. Not only can club and sub be there, but Chiesa seems to stick his head in places that it shouldn't go sometimes. So he might actually, just shooting a takedown, he might get subbed, honestly. So I won't be shocked. I won't be shocked if Holland subs him. And I won't be shocked, honestly, if Chiesa subs him. But most likely outcome, I think, is knockout by Holland here.
I even think back to that Vicente Luque fight, and how often is Vicente Luque showing off his grappling prowess? I mean, from time to time, we see it when he beats the bloody hell out of somebody and then they're still around. He'll like finally latch something on a Nico Price late in the fight. But more often than not, I feel like he'd rather just bang somebody out with that left hook. And Chiesa just gave it up. Like he literally was in great spots, just fell over the top and then gave up the choke. So I think that you have a great note there. And I've noted the same things. I feel like Chiesa is like one of these guys who he's kind of like Kevin Lee on offense, fucking phenomenal. On defense, it all falls apart in an instant, right? So it's just those are archetypes in fighting. Kevin Lee, when he's on top and he gets the takedown, it looks great. But when he is shooting for the takedown, he puts his head to the outside and begs to get guillotined. You see it over and over again. So these are the patterns you got to pick up on. And I do think that Chiesa has a couple of those long-standing patterns, and it's a problem with having a lot of fight tape. People can pick up on that. Go ahead.
He's been subbed by the Darce twice, by Jorge Masvidal once. So
this is the thing that people forget, man. That's another one that I have in my memory bank is the Jorge Masvidal finish where Masvidal, how many guys is he subbing? Not very many, right?
Not many.
It's guys that force the grappling and then panic. And Chiesa, sometimes when he's in an offensive position and doesn't instantly finish, he panics. And when you do that, you make bad decisions, you give up bad spots, and you get finished. So something to watch out for. Trevin Giles taking on Gabriel Bonfim. This is going to be the prelim headliner. Trevin Giles, 16-4, taking on the undefeated Gabriel Bonfim. And, Narco, I've been saying that this is the better Bonfim brother. I've believed that. His brother had a couple losses, all to good guys coming into the UFC. But I also felt like, the writing was on the wall a little bit for his style. I did bet Benoit Saint Denis against him because I felt like the market had gone a little bit too bonanza on him. I feel like in this spot, though, Gabriel Bonfim does have some athletic intangible advantages here. I think from a skill standpoint, this might be a fairly even fight. But I think back to the Michael Morales fight, and it feels like an archetype for what is probably going to happen here, which is Trevin Giles could be having some decent spots, some decent moments, but I think the power of Gabriel Bonfim could change the fight instantly, and I think his finishing instincts are there. I think if he gets this fight to the mat, he could submit Trevin Giles, who has a good ground game, but I think it's if he gets hurt in this fight that he could get submitted, and I think he can get hurt on the feet here. I do not trust his chin. Trevin Giles' chin is something that kind of comes and goes. It's very inconsistent in my view. So kind of leaning towards the Bonfim side here and Bonfim ITD, but the price is huge. It's like minus 310. Don't feel compelled to get involved from a money line standpoint. Probably slight value to the dog there at that price, but it's just Trevin Giles, not the kind of fighter I like to bet on. Feel like his decision-making isn't always optimal. But to Brando's point, I'm passing on minus 300 Bonfim. Me too. But again, I do think this is the better Bonfim brother. So last time I was eager to fade the plus 250 because I had Bonfim against McKinney, right? So I kind of knew that he was underpriced there, but then maybe overpriced as a reaction to that big knockout. Whereas this fight, I think Bonfim rightly getting a bunch of hype and steam here, but also, this is a step up in competition. So curious what you think about this one, Narco, especially having taped it.
Well, to be fair, I thought the other Bonfim brother was better. And I still think he's the more technical striker. He's the better technical striker. But I tend to agree with you now. And that's not because of his loss, to be honest. It's not because of it. It has nothing to do with the loss. I retaped this Bonfim brother and I looked through everything. I literally went like as far as I can go with this tape. And the one thing that sticks out with this Bonfim brother a lot more than the other one is one, this guy throws with a lot more power. He has a lot more finishing ability than his brother. That's one. Two, this guy is way more dangerous on the ground than his brother. Like if the mat hits
100%,
if the fight hits the ground, this guy is always looking for subs. Like he's gonna try to sub you, and he subbed very, very high level black belts in LFA. Like the one guy he subbed was a very, very high level black belt. So, this Bonfim brother, what I see from him is better durability for one than his brother. This is what I came off tape. He seems to have better durability. He seems to have way more power and way more finishing instinct than his brother. So, yeah, technically speaking, I think his brother's a better striker. But overall, more dangerous, more like finishing ability, and I think more durability even is this brother here. So the problem that I see in this fight, and pre-tape, I thought I was going to bet Giles. I said, man, this line's too big. Like, Giles is a competitive guy with a lot of pretty good fighters. He has power in his hands. He can actually grapple as well. He's pretty good on the ground. So I'm like, why the heck is this guy -3 something? Then I taped it and I'm like, man, this guy has all the attributes that Giles doesn't like. A lot of pressure, a lot of power in his hands, very good jiu-jitsu. These things are all not good for Trevin Giles. Like, let's be honest. Like, he's in a match against Koski, for Christ's sake. And, he's losing around to Koski. Is that a good look? Like, Koski's not a good fighter. I don't think that guy is honestly UFC level. And
he landed 25 significant strikes in that fight, Narco.
Yeah, and he lost a round to that guy, to Louis Koski. He lost a round to him. And the thing is, when you constantly look at his fights, Morales fights, he gets hurt, dropped, killed. Dricus du Plessis knocks him out. Preston Parsons, last fight, hurt him really bad. He was doing the chicken dance in that fight against Preston Parsons. And to be honest, I went back and watched the fight. There's a good case to give that fight to Preston Parsons, honestly. His face was more fucked up. There was a lot more damage on Preston Parsons' face. But I think if you scored it round for round, I kind of had Parsons winning that fight. So, I don't know, man. Bonfim just looks the part. He is powerful. He's got very good jiu-jitsu, so he's not worried. Absolutely not worried if you take him down. Like, take me down, buddy. You're going to get subbed. So he's overthrowing. He's trying to take your head off. And these are all things that Giles just doesn't like, man. And his chin is not very good. So I honestly think he gets knocked out. ITD is probably the way to go if it's not very far from the KO. Just because he can do anything he wants, honestly. He could sub Giles and he can knock out Giles. So, I'm not betting the -3 something. Of course not. But I think I might look for a prop here.
Awesome, man. Fair play. I tend to agree with you here. Think it's put together for athletic upside. They got one guy, undefeated fighter. Think they want to push him up the card a little bit. And Trevin Giles, no name, been around for a long time, never landed more than 71 significant strikes in a UFC fight. They're aware of that. They're like, let's run him out there against Bonfim, who hasn't been tested as deep into these fights yet in the UFC. But I think that, he might not get that opportunity this weekend either, because he's going to be swinging heavies at the head, neck, and chest of Trevin Giles. Next up, guys, we got a fun fight here, and one that I did have a bet. I've discussed it a little bit on this channel, so I won't belabor the point here, but I did take the early numbers on Rogerio de Lima. I took -113. I thought that he was going to close here over -150. The line's even gone further than I expected it to, because I expected a little bit more buyback from the public on the Derrick Lewis side. I think that'll probably come later in the week. The public doesn't tend to get involved as much until later in the week around face-offs and weigh-ins, for example. So when I look at this fight, I just say to myself, you got two guys trending in opposite directions. In his last fight, Derrick Lewis didn't land a single significant strike, right? And I had bet him KO1 there at +800. He didn't even give me a chance, right? Didn't go out there and attempt strikes, got taken down multiple times by Sergey Spivak, a guy who he should have been able to defend takedowns from at earlier points in his career. I think the thing that's gone unremarked upon about Derrick Lewis is that he's a very good anti-grappler. He's a very good anti-wrestler historically. That's what he used to be very good at, is that wrestlers would be scared to go take him down because he was big and powerful. And when they would get in close, he'd try and dig some underhooks. He'd do the random stand-up, right? He'd just, get back up to his feet. So they were like, man, this guy is really hard to deal with, super athletic, best blue belt in Texas. And if he touches me on the feet one time, I might die. So I think when you think about that, a lot of people are easily going to talk themselves into Derrick Lewis here. But Rogerio de Lima has one knockout loss ever. It was prior to his UFC career. It was back in Chuto, Brazil. So when you look at the guy, his problem has been on the ground, right? I had a heavyweight power rankings I put together a long time ago, and I basically had wrote up about de Lima that he looks like he has more upside at heavyweight than light heavyweight because he's faster. He's got strike variety. He throws big hooks that can knock people out. He throws calf kicks that get people really off balance. He has takedowns. I thought he beat Blagoy Ivanov as well. So when I had looked at his past run, I was like, there's an argument this guy's on a 5-fight win streak at heavyweight. Whereas Derrick Lewis can't win a fight, can't win a round right now, can't land a strike right now. Cyril Gane just danced around him, right? And Cyril Gane, not the most powerful guy, not known for his devastating one-strike power. So how did he win? Derrick Lewis quit in front of his home crowd in Houston. And I'm not trying to be a jerk. It's just what happened. Go back and rewatch it. He didn't get hit with something that he went, oh God, I'm shutting off. He was thinking about quitting like 5 times. And then he was like, all right, fine. I'm just going to go out now because it was embarrassing and he couldn't land anything. Against good strikers, this guy has been exposed a bunch of times. I think that Rogerio de Lima is a better striker than Derrick Lewis. God's honest truth. Skill for skill. I'm not talking about who's got more power, but I think they both have power. I think way faster is Rogerio de Lima right now at their current iteration. And I think he could take a better punch as well. Don't think he's ever been knocked down in the UFC, whereas Derrick Lewis has been knocked down several times his last few fights. So I've been fading Derrick Lewis over and over and over. I've been betting Tai Tuivasa plus 170. I've been betting Sergey Pavlovich short plus money, I think. If you guys keep giving me these short prices, I'll keep figuring it out because I feel like he's got to be at least, plus 150 dog here. What do you think about this one, Narco?
Yeah, man, I got on De Lima at plus 100 when the line opened on FanDuel a while back. I bet a lot of units on him. I have 3 units on him. I wish I put more, but after taping it, I added more De Lima at minus 175 even. I added more just because I still think the line is way off. Honestly, I kind of feel like this line should be minus 275 in that area. And I know it's heavyweights, and I know Lewis hits hard, but I'm going to give you a hot take here. I think De Lima stops him via calf kick, via leg kick. That's my hot take. I think he stops him with calf kicks because Lewis has no idea how to check those. And if he lands anywhere near what he landed against Acosta, and Acosta is extremely tough. We know this guy. Like, we've seen him in fights where his leg gets chewed off and he still fights. Like, the guy's just, he's mentally very tough, right? Derrick Lewis is not mentally tough. We said it. You kind of said it in the show yesterday, and I agreed with you. This guy's a quitter, man. He quits, okay? And if he eats like 4 or 5 of those De Lima calf kicks, I think he's just going to quit. He's going to drop on the ground. Is this recorded, Liam? He's going to drop on the ground and quit. I'm serious. I honestly believe he's going to, after watching tape, I'm like, if De Lima is smart, he's going to chop him about 4 or 5 times to the leg, and Lewis is going to be done with it. He's going to absolutely be done.
And Narco, can I ask you something, though? If we saw De Lima come out here, could he not do what Sergey Spivak just did?
Of course.
I think Sergey's a better wrestler, but I don't think it's by leaps and bounds. And I feel like De Lima has huge power. He picks guys up and elevates them over his head. So dude, I feel like he could easily take down Lewis.
I was surprised when Acosta is a big dude, man. He literally picked him up and slammed him. And that was after he was tired already. I think it was in the 2nd or 3rd round, if I'm not mistaken. So that wasn't when he was fresh, even when he did that. Like, that was into the fight. Let me just look to make sure. He had multiple takedowns, but I know the one where he slammed him was it was in round 2. He literally picked him up and slammed him. So the guy is extremely strong. So I wouldn't be surprised. And he's a black belt on the ground. I mean, I don't know what type of black belt. He can be, one of those fake black belts.
Dude, he trains at ATT. So I don't think it's a fake black belt. I think it's under Pahumpa, if I'm not mistaken.
You know where he got it from?
I believe it's from Pahumpa, but let me double check because I don't want to speak out of turn.
I'm not sure, but either way, he's way better grappler than Lewis. Let's not even kid ourselves, especially submission grappling. So if he wants to go that route, that's the thing. That's why I bet him again at minus 175. It's like multiple routes for him to win here. And, and again, Lewis, I think, is checked out, dude. Lewis is here for a check. He really is.
I had resisted that thought until the last fight where I thought he literally did not look like he wanted to be there at all. And it's kind of looked progressively more and more like that. The last fight where I felt like he had any success, besides for the Dawkins fight, was against Tuivasa. And that's another guy who's very one-note banger on the feet. And my only read on that fight was at plus 170, one guy could take a better punch than the other. They could both give a good punch. Let's run it. Let's see how many times he wins this one. And when you have these compounding losses, it's not like this is the first time in his career he's been knocked out, guys. He's been getting knocked out since Sean Jordan back in the day. Guys that know how to strike, guys that can move fast, can kick Derrick Lewis, get off at their shots at range. And by the way, he doesn't like that. He likes to be the guy who's scary. So he does not like to cower and get hit with shots. And when you're a guy like Volkov that has no finishing power, he'll stick around the whole 15 minutes and maybe try and find something late. But I think if you have real power to offer with those big hooks, with the calf kicks, to Narco's point, I feel like he might find a way out, and I also think the takedown upside is there. So give me De Lima. Honestly, I'm not as anxious to go lay it at these prices now. Only reason being, it's a heavyweight fight, right? It's still volatile enough at the end of the day. Derrick Lewis does have big power early, but at this point, I just think the writing's on the wall a little bit. I think the market agrees.
It's insane to watch that last two fights. I mean, Spivak fight, like literally Spivak was just like pulling him down, pushing him down. Like Lewis wasn't fighting hands. He's also like he was just literally falling right on his face every single time, face first. It's like, dude, are you gonna do anything?
It was like he had never been to a wrestling practice before.
Nothing, no resistance in the takedowns.
He might be the worst American wrestler to like grow up in America and fight for this long at this level, man. He's real bad at wrestling.
I have a hard time outside of a bonk early, very early. I think he's done. I mean, he's probably going to be done here. And somebody made a point in chat. I look $500K a fight he makes.
Yeah,
you think
I would keep showing. Dude, also, how about this, Narco? I thought about from a motivation standpoint, it would be the exact opposite thing of what you'd want to say to motivate somebody to compete. Dana White last time out was asked, like, what do you think about Derrick Lewis? He's been on hard times. He hasn't been winning these fights. And he's like, we're always going to have a place for Derrick Lewis. We love watching this guy fight. We love having him out there. You know what that really means? We love running this guy out there with our new heavyweight prospects. We love getting this guy beat up for $500K. He's like, it's only $500K. We get a new prospect for $500K. I mean, good deal. And Derrick's like, great deal.
Dude, he's got 2.2 million followers. He makes a lot of fucking money, man. He
uses it for the post-fight interview. Oh, he fucked me up. That was a good one, though. Yep. I'll get you back next time. Like,
yep. People love it. It goes viral everywhere,
Exactly. He'll be like, oh, I would have had him, but my balls was hot there. So I love it. We'll always be Derrick Lewis fans on this show, but don't think it's going to be a good night for him on Saturday, personally. Next up, we got Roman Kopylov, who's starting to come on a little bit in the UFC, taking on Claudio Riberio. And Claudio, another guy who's got a little bit of momentum behind him, going to figure out who's coming and who's going a little bit at the middleweight division. Let's take a look at the intangibles here, pulling them up on Tapology as we speak. We've got 32 years of age for Kopylov, 31 for Claudio Riberio. He's going to have a 2-inch reach advantage, a 1-inch height advantage here. Narco, if I'm not mistaken, you like the underdog here?
Yeah, I like Riberio. I like him a good bit, honestly. Yeah, I got him plus 205. I like him like as far as like down to 175 actually here. Here's the thing. First of all, Kopylov as a big favorite, it just doesn't sound right for one, to be honest. Like, okay, he looked good against Punahele Soriano, no problem. But he looked bad against Carl Roberson. He didn't look very good against Darrius in a stand-up fight, right? In a mostly stand-up fight. That's all that Darrius fight was mostly stand-up, right? There wasn't any maybe one takedown from Darrius. I don't remember, but it was a stand-up.
Darrius took him down in that fight after he was whooping his ass on the feet. And I remember this. I just bet Darrius a fucking square like a week ago. But in any case, I had been betting him for a long time because of that fight in part. I had bet him big against Kopylov, and I did shit my pants. But he was whooping his ass on the feet before he ended up going to the takedowns. And the only reason he did that, his orbital broke. So literally his orbital is out there fucking shattered, and he was having his way on the feet prior. So yeah, I think to your point, Kopylov looked terrible in that fight, honestly.
So I'll give you some very, this is why tape study is good and why I played Ribeiro, right? He might lose. Listen, Kopylov is the better technical striker. No doubt about it. I have no qualms about that. He might even be the better grappler. I don't know. Both these guys don't really grapple much, but fine. There are some very important things that I looked at in this fight. For one, Ribeiro, first of all, is extremely powerful with his hands. If he lands on you, he's probably going to flatten you out. Like, he's got very big power, and he's got massive hands. But the important part of what I watched is when I watched the Darrius fight, right? Kopylov fights southpaw. Darrius is orthodox. He landed a lot of inside leg kicks. All right, to Kopylov. And he had actually Kopylov limping in that fight. Ribeiro has some of the nastiest leg kicks you will see. Now, the important aspect here is when I look throughout his career, he never fought southpaws. Ribeiro never fought southpaws. So it's like, fuck, man, how am I going to gauge does this guy throw inside leg kicks? Like, how am I going to know? He hasn't fought southpaws. So I know he throws a bunch of hard calf kicks against orthodox, but I don't know what he does against southpaws, right? Guess what? Last fight, or 2 fights ago, sorry, when he lost to Abdul Razak, right? He nailed Abdul Razak with about 4 or 5 calf kicks, and he made Abdul Razak switch stances. He went to southpaw. Now go watch that. He lands 2 nasty inside leg kicks, man. I mean, fucking Razak's leg, he made him shoot. He literally, that was the point that made Razak shoot for a takedown after the 2 inside hard leg kicks. So what I see from this guy is he loves to throw leg kicks. He loves to throw, obviously, inside leg kicks, and he's looking for you for southpaws. And Kopylov doesn't do well with those things. And the other thing that I want to mention is he throws a lot of head kicks when he throws. He sets up with inside leg kicks to the head kick. And he makes you drop your hands because you're trying to fucking avoid these inside leg kicks, and you might eat a head kick. So the thing is, I think the power is mostly on Ribeiro's side. I think he's got certain attributes that are very bad for Kopylov in this fight, particularly what I said. And I'm getting plus 205 on the fighter that I think is a lot more dangerous, that has more finishing ability in this fight. And then one more thing. A lot of people are talking about cardio. I think Ribeiro's cardio is fine. Watch his 5-round fight that he ended the fight. I think his cardio is fine. Kopylov actually has cardio issues. I don't remember what fight it was when he had hands on the hips and he was hunched over. I think it was I don't remember. Hold on a second. Now let me look at his. I think it was the Carl Roberson fight where he had hands on his knees, hands on his hips, and he was hunched over in the third where he was dead tired. So now they're at elevation. I think, honestly, Ribeiro might have the cardio edge here, to be honest. So, I mean, I'm getting plus 200 on a guy that I think has more finishing ability, has all these attributes that I said that are not good for Kopylov when I watch tape. And I can't ignore that. So, like I said, the skilled fighter, yes, it's Kopylov, but skill doesn't always pay the bill. So,
yeah, and we're seeing a plus 205, plus 200 type price available out there on the Riberio side. And, he's a fun Brazilian banger, right? I think the UFC, in terms of marketing machine, likes to get behind a guy like that. I think that's one thing to look at. I think number 2, you're normally looking at recency bias that will make somebody unplayable after a big knockout win. He just got one over Joseph Holmes. Nobody gives a shit, right? Everybody's looking at Roman Kopylov because he knocked out Punahele Soriano, who's a more impressive name, no doubt about it. But both guys kind of just treated their last opposition accordingly. I like Puna a lot. He's a fun guy, banger. But when you look at his game overall, his cardio is not great. His wrestling's very ineffective at this level. So he's got good defensive wrestling, and his striking is power-based and kind of runs out quick. Kopylov picked him off with better, cleaner, crisper shots. He's a more sophisticated striker than him. Duraev is not a bad fighter, but he's not a guy with great pace. He was able to bail himself out there with a bunch of takedowns. Carl Roberson is one of the worst grapplers in the history of the UFC in terms of like in-cage decision-making, made absolutely boneheaded decisions to get submitted by Brendan Allen, for example, at that heel hook scenario. Kind of reminds you of a Jamal Emmers at times, right? Where it's just going for a heel or a toe hold against Pat Sabatini. Was that a good idea? Hindsight, probably not a good idea. So just a couple things that are huge red flags in my view, getting submitted by Carl Roberson, number 1 on that list. Kopylov does have some skills, though. He's still young enough that he's been putting it together a little bit. He's gotten bigger physically. I felt like he looked like he was on all the sauce in his last fight against our guy, Punahele. So he's definitely made some improvements to his training, to his preparation. Also, we got to give him the benefit of the doubt. They're coming over from Russia. First fight in the UFC is against Carl Roberson, and Carl Roberson had more UFC tenure, I believe, than he did at that point. So he was a guy who was used to going out there at 205 pounds. He did drop to 185. I think that's made his game a little bit more effective as well. So a couple things to note, but overall, man, I do not trust Kopylov at this big chalk price. I don't normally like betting on guys as huge favorites when they're just strikers. And I do not think Kopylov is going to be consistently out wrestling Riberio here. It's just not his primary style of operating. So yeah, for me, definitely more interested in the dog than the favorite here, but got to do more due diligence before I get to the cards. And honestly, why rush? It seems like the number's getting better on the dog here. So I'm going to take my time here, but I do think Claudio Riberio at over 2-1 is probably the side for me.
Yeah, I just want to state, like Doug is saying Roman is bigger, stronger, and more durable. I don't believe so. He's not bigger. He's definitely not bigger, and I don't think he's stronger than Ribeiro. I think Ribeiro is actually the bigger guy here.
You know what's interesting too, Narco, is I have my notes on Roman Kopylov, and to be honest, they're pretty shallow. I only have the one fight against Roberson. However, the only thing that is in all caps on my document, and I could share this if people don't believe it, but it's literally in all caps. It says crispy with like 11 Y's leg kick from Roberson, because he hit him with one that was real fucking hard and like got him to give a big facial reaction. When you're somebody like me, when you're somebody like Narco that watches a lot of tape, you kind of start to see how fighters react when they get hit and tell if, oh, that one was meaningful, or, you know what, he's got a poker face on, but that one really bothered him. Certain things that you pick up when you watch somebody over time. And I do think Kopylov, one of his problems is that he's not a good poker player, right? When he gets hurt, when he feels something, bro, he is like his face starts to react in these like terrible twisted ways. And I felt like in the Darrius fight, a lot of it was on his face. When he's getting taken down, when he's in these bad situations, he's like deflating in the spot. So he's not a bad fighter, but I think he is not a guy who's going to pay off this kind of huge chalk price against somebody of a similar skill level here. So that's my opinion. Next up, let's move to 170 pounds, where we've got short notice newcomer Darrius Flowers making his UFC debut, taking on the more seasoned Celtic kid, and he's not Irish, so I don't give a rat's ass. Jake Matthews. I'm just playing. Jake Matthews here, UFC tenured guy, way more experience, right? I'm curious to know what this line is. Minus 295, Jake Matthews, plus 250. It seems to come back on Darrius Flowers. And Darrius Flowers, I believe, surprised me on the Contender Series. I don't think that I expected him to do so well. Let me look at my past history here with Darrius Flowers, see if I did bet anything. But Narco, I'll kick this one over to you, my man, because I haven't done my tape. I did not expect this guy to be on the card, a week ago or whatever. So I haven't done much due diligence on the Darrius Flowers side. But I will tell you, I bet Jake Matthews by sub in his last fight, and I was disgusted, right? I just felt like it was not a good showing from Jake Matthews. Felt like he came in very flat there. And so for me, don't feel inspired and fired up to go get back to the window at minus 300 on the Jake Matthews side. Does he have more experience? Yes. Is it a winnable fight for him? Of course. Am I willing to go lay it with him when he's kind of fumbled the bag before? Not necessarily. So I'm curious to hear your take, brother.
Yeah. Flowers is a Dana White's Contender Series guy, but he kind of won in an awkward way. I don't know if you remember against that Gugaladze guy where he got injured in the wrestling sequence where he got, taken down or whatever. And I don't know, he popped his shoulder or whatever the heck happened. It was a weird win, right? But Flowers had already worked his way to go down to 55. He said he's fighting at 55. Well, he had a fight matched up. It got pulled because he popped for Osterin, I believe it was, okay? And I guess after that, USADA said, oh, it was such low levels that, he didn't really, it was probably by accident, blah, blah, blah. So they kind of gave him a pass, I guess. I don't know what the deal was, but that particular fight got pulled. So he was waiting for a fight at 55. Well, no one was, I guess the phone wasn't ringing, and suddenly the phone rang, but it was back at 70 against Jake Matthews, right? And he's like, yeah, I'm going to take it. It's, a week out or whatever, and he took the fight. The one deficiency that I really, really see from Flowers is his cardio sucks. I mean, it's very fucking bad. I mean, when I watch some of these fights, particularly Leninger fight, I mean, he was dead, absolutely dead in that fight. And, Leninger get to do whatever he wanted with the grappling. And Leninger, when you watch him, he's not a very strong guy. He's very physical. This guy's a tall, lengthy, mostly striking a lot in LFA. And he had his way with Flowers on the ground, basically, when Flowers got tired, right? There's some other fights where you watch him, even the Volker fight where he kind of death gassed again, and Volker got to do what he wanted to do on the ground and do what he wants. So if Matthews is smart here, because Flowers does carry a lot of power in his hands, and he's very physical, and he's a freak athlete, to be honest. I mean, he's absolute freak athlete. I think he went to the UFC PI, and they did some type of study on him. As far as I don't know what it was exactly, but basically they told him it was about body mass, muscle, this and that, and they told him he's in the top 1% of all their athletes ever in the UFC. So he's a freak athlete. I mean, this guy's a freak. He has a ton of power, but he doesn't have good cardio. He has very bad cardio. This fight is on very short notice. Jake Matthews has a good ground game. Like, he has good jiu-jitsu if he wants to get it down there. The problem is it's like he's fell in love with this striking bullshit, and it's getting him in trouble. He got knocked down and hurt so many times against Semelsberger, right?
What a boneheaded fight, dude.
Yeah, the way to beat Semelsberger is you need to grapple. You don't want to stand with this guy because he's got a crazy good chin and he has a ton of power, right? He's got like 10 knockdowns in the UFC. Why are you standing with this guy? And it's like, I don't know how smart, what kind of game plan he's going to have here, but skill-wise, he definitely has a lot more skill here. He's the cleaner striker. He's the better grappler. He's got proven cardio. So all these things are inside, but Flowers does have a ton of power. So he has to be very careful, I think, in round number 1. Because I think if Flowers wins here, it's round 1 KO, guys. That's how he's going to win. And if not, I think he's going to get finished by Matthews, whether it be in 1, 2, or 3.
Sweet. So maybe we look towards a under there potentially. I'm seeing a -175 to the under 2.5 rounds. Matthews did fight it out pretty tough in his last fight after getting hurt a bunch of times there to make it to the scorecard. So maybe that's something I want to keep in the back of the mind there, laying chalk. But just your point about bad cardio, it's hard to imagine somebody coming in on short notice who's going to empty the tank in round 1, being around for another 7.5 minutes after that. So interesting note there.
I mean, when this guy has you hurt, Liam, he is throwing haymakers from left field and right field and center field, you name it. Like, he's not stopping. And then if he doesn't get you out of there, and if he doesn't get Matthews out of there, it's not like Semelsberger. Like, Semelsberger has good cardio. This guy's just going to die. He's literally going to die if he doesn't get him out of there. So, I mean, it's unders feel like I think I'm just going to play something like fight doesn't start round 3, Liam. Maybe that.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. And Bobbert fish sticks, especially at elevation. Great point, brother.
Very good point.
Shout out to the chat, guys. A lot of great people rocking with us. Over 111 people. It's 1:21 Eastern time. We still got 3 fights left here, but I just want to shout out our guy, Artem MMA. Says, have you read the Mark Hunt book yet, Liam? Fantastic book. Probably the best I've read. Ronda Rousey's book is good too. Brother, please drop those in the comment section for me, and I will absolutely add them to the Amazon list, get them sent here, add them to this bookshelf right here, and get cracking on them as well. Because no, I haven't read those books, but yes, I am interested in combat sports, book recommendations, video game recommendations, any kind of combat sports culture. Drop that in the comments below. Let me know where I should be putting my time and attention, because I will definitely check that out. Thank you. Next up, we got CJ Vergara back in the driver's seat here against Vinicius Salvador out of the Amanda Hebos team. Vinicius Salvador went out there and cashed me a ticket on Contender Series, right? Fading the chin of Shannon Ross has been very profitable thus far in his UFC tenure, whether that was on the Contender Series or against Jesus Aguilar last time out. But in any case, when I look at this kind of fight, I say to myself, CJ Vergara, he's a guy that can get hurt. He can get tagged in the early going. His grappling is honestly deficient. It's a little bit of a suspect area to his game. But if he doesn't get finished, he's a grinder. He's a guy that could fight hard for 15 minutes. He pushes a pretty decent pace, and he's stingy. He's not an easy guy to get one over on. If it's on the feet, he'll go to war with you. But he does have an awkward body. He does have a hard time making the weight class as well. Kind of an awkward build. He's done a little bit of bouncing between weights, if my memory serves as well, 25 and 35. So a little bit more research and due diligence needed for me here. But on the Vinicius Salvador side, he's taken a little bit of time to turn around here from his Contender Series showing. I wonder if he has any canceled bouts in that interim time. 2 canceled bouts in the Victor Altamirano fight. So he had a canceled bout against Clayton Rodriguez, canceled bout against Daniel Lacerda. And you know that if he had that canceled bout with Lacerda, it was Lacerda pulling out. Nobody wants to pull out of a fight with that guy. But in any case, Victor Altamirano, another guy who is able to kind of gritted out for 15 minutes, not a standout specialist anywhere, a little bit of a talented boxer, I guess, but really not the most powerful guy. Just a guy who could fight hard for 15 minutes, make it awkward, compete in every range a little bit, all-rounded, master of all, or excuse me, jack of all trades, master of none, right? So I kind of feel Vergara is a similar archetype. So he could definitely get the win here by decision. I wouldn't be surprised by that. He's got a decent bit of power in his hands as well. Salvador, for me, I did bet him by sub on Contender Series. Try to be a little bit unconventional, bet the ITD at plus 333. So I made small profit. But overall, he looked like a guy whose finishing instincts could use some improvement, right? Got a lot of knockdowns against Shannon Ross, but probably could have just grabbed the neck or followed up in some of those exchanges and kind of was letting him off the hook against better fighters that could come back to bite you. And Salvador doesn't seem like a guy who's got super reliable cardio. He's been knocked out in the past. He's been hurt. He's been finished. So I understand why he's a dog here. Vergara, you can hurt him. You can hit him really hard, but you got to kill the guy. You got to really take him out of the fight. You got to finish him. And I think that Salvador is very capable of that, but it's probably going to be in the first 7.5 minutes or he's going to fall off a cliff here, I would think. So an interesting fight. And I got to do a little bit more due diligence. How do you feel about this one, Narco?
Yeah, I played the over. I love the over here at it was plus 155. Okay. So just doesn't make sense to me at that number. Here's the thing with this fight. First off, it's flyweight. It's 125. It's in a big cage. You're giving me plus 155 over 2.5 on flyweight. Then you look at CJ Vergara. Guy is fucking tough as nails. Did he get hurt last fight? Yeah. But how did he get hurt, guys? Spinning wheel kick to the fucking dome? I mean, everybody gets hurt with that. You know what I'm saying? It's like that's what started it all, right? It was a spinning head kick to the dome. But this guy historically, he's faced, watch the Cleats and Rodriguez. Cleats and Rodriguez probably one of the biggest hitters at 25. And he took a lot of shots from Cleats and Rodriguez, and he absorbed them very well. I don't think, Salvador throws hard, but he doesn't throw Cleats and Rodriguez hard, in my opinion. The guy is extremely durable. Vergara is just a tough SOB. And now he's fighting a guy in Salvador who I also think is pretty tough, to be honest. He took a lot of shots from Shannon Ross. And okay, Shannon Ross' chin is bad, but he throws pretty damn hard himself. And, Salvador's been finished and he got finished by Fialho, but that was more of positional, ground and pound. He got destroyed on the ground, which Fialho can do. I just don't see Vergara doing something like that against Salvador. Salvador is a black belt as well. He's not a fish out of the water, but Fialho is just levels above him when it comes to grappling. So I don't think, first of all, Vergara is even going to shoot takedowns here. I think this is probably going to be a 15-minute stand-up fight. And I just see both guys as being pretty durable here in a stand-up fight. I don't see any of them finishing each other. And I'm getting plus 155 in a flyweight fight. It just doesn't make sense. One of the guys has never been knocked out. Okay. Vergara's never been knocked out in his career. Does he get hurt? Has he been hurt? Yeah. He's been wobbled, but the guy is extremely tough and durable. You absolutely have to kill him to get him out of there, right? We saw that last fight. So for me, I just see this fight going the distance, man. If you want to take a poke, I took a poke at Vinicius Salvador by decision at plus 550. How could that not be a play? I don't see him knocking out, like I said, Vergara. And if I think this fight's going to scorecards, then that line is way off because Vergara just doesn't win by big margins. He just doesn't. Go watch all of his fights. You're talking about, even Contender Series fight where it was back and forth in that fight, an absolute slugfest versus a guy that's 500, right? In Jacob Silva or whatever. It was in Fury. Sorry. It was a back and forth fight. And I guess he knocked him out maybe late, but it was a back and forth fight. And Jacob Silva just doesn't have a lot of durability either. So for me, it's a close fight. The line's about accurate in my opinion, just based on, Vergara might have some slight grappling edge. I just don't think he's going to use it. And in the striking, I do think he's the cleaner striker, but he's much smaller too here. And another thing to look at is these stats are wrong, just so you know, Liam. When it says, this guy's 5'7", this Salvador, that's not accurate. He's at least 5'9". So just want you to know that. I went back and I said, man, this guy's only 5'7", But then when I watched against, he fought Altamirano, and they have Altamirano as 5'8", and he's taller than him. He can't be 5'7", right?
Yeah, I think sometimes they try and list them to look a little bit more competitive. Honestly, it's a weird thing because it changes over time. I've had my notes as like 72 inches on somebody's reach, and then for this fight, it's 73. Like they'll always play within those margins a little bit if they can. And to your point here, a couple of the intangibles, there is a 5-year age gap favoring Salvador here. So he is under 30 years of age. Yeah, Nick, just put your comment on screen. Appreciate you watching, brother. When we're looking at this fight, I think to myself, Vinicius Salvador, he's a guy who, he does have some interesting finishing skills, but it's a unique shout for you on that decision. He'd actually never won a fight by decision. So hopefully, he could get one across the finish line for you first time here. But certainly a guy that, showed he's capable of going the full 15 in his last fight. So next up, we got Matthew Semelsberger and Uros Medic. This is the talk of the, Twitter streets this week. It seems that way. I have had some really good success betting Uros Medic to this point in the UFC. I faded him with Jalen Turner, and then I bet on him bigly. I'm trying to think which fight that was. I'm pulling it up right now. Was that against Omar Morales? I think it was. Yeah, I bet 4.5 units at plus 120 against Omar Morales. So went pretty hard there. It just felt like Omar Morales is a guy who's not really making big improvements. Also, Uros is huge relative to him. Had a lot of size advantages there. Now you're seeing him compete at 170 pounds, right? So kind of the proof is in the pudding there that this guy was too big for 155. But when you go up against one of the biggest lightweights on the planet in Jalen Turner, that advantage is not going to be there for you. Plus, you have the Alaska regional scene experience to fall back on, not going to put you in the greatest position to win. So I feel like Uros Medic's still doing some learning on the job, hard fight so far in the UFC, but a talented guy. So interesting fight here. Narco, what do you think?
I have a very big bet on Matthew Semelsberger at minus 147. There's a lot of things that stick out to me about Uros Medic. For one, he's taken this on short notice, and he's moving up in weight class. So originally he was a 170 pounder. He didn't think that weight division was good for him because he was kind of like weak, I guess, in that division. So what he did is he went down to 155, right? First fight at 155 was in UFC, I believe, 259, or was it in Contender Series? I don't remember. But I think it was Contender Series. He looked good, right?
Yeah, I think Elon Cruz is a 55er as well.
Yeah, so he fought in Contender Series first. He got a nice win. Then he beat Elon Cruz. But what's Mikey Gonzalez and what's Elon Cruz? I mean, those guys are not UFC level fighters, right? Then he faces Jalen Turner, who, no shame in that loss, right? Jalen Turner is very, very high level, very good fighter, ton of power, good jiu-jitsu, right? The problem that I see with Uros Medic is the last fight, is Omar Morales fight, right? He loses round 1 to Omar Morales. Omar Morales historically is a 45er, and he's a big 45er, right? But at 55 there, he's the other thing about Omar Morales, he's up there in age. I mean, the guy is like 37 years old, right? He's nearing his end of his career. He wins first round against Uros Medic. And then come second round, he's winning again. He's winning the striking again, but he gets caught with a very nice straight left, I believe, or left hook, and he drops him and it hurts him. So then I'm asking myself, now let me go back and look at Semelsberger at 70, right? Because this is at 70. Semelsberger is one of the hardest hitters, honestly, at 70. You look, like I mentioned earlier, he has 10 knockdowns in the UFC. This guy drops everybody. He dropped Wells multiple times in that fight, and I think he probably won that fight. I know Wells had some top time, but if you're going to count damage, he did most of the damage in that fight. I mean, he dropped Wells twice. This guy has a ton of power, man. And the one thing that I see with Uros Medic that I did not like at all, he drops his hands when he is backing out of the pocket. Every single time his hands are down. And Semelsberger throws a perfect straight right hand, man. That's what he drops everybody with. And I truly believe that punch is going to land and it's going to knock out Medic. The other problem with Medic is short notice, Liam. This guy's never been to the third round, Liam, in his career, and he's fighting at elevation. There's 3 things that are absolutely huge red flags for this guy against a guy in Semelsberger who has great cardio for 170. So for me, it's like, if he doesn't knock out Semelsberger in round 1, and no one has really knocked out Semelsberger, including huge hitters like who was it? Chaos Williams and Jeremiah Wells. What makes me think this guy's gonna knock out Semelsberger? So, and Semelsberger, to be honest, has a grappling edge here. He can wrestle if he wants to. So I thought the line was way off. I was actually accurate in my prediction, because this line has ballooned up to, I don't even know what it is now. It's like at 200. So I really like Semelsberger in this spot.
I get where you're coming from, man, for sure. For me, the one thing is, I do feel like there are some unknowns for me coming into this matchup. Number one, I believe this is a short notice fight where Semelsberger was supposed to be taking on Yohan Lionesi, if I'm not mistaken, and that was a layup for Semelsberger in a lot of ways, right? Like, let's be fair about that. Unless he got knocked out there, it's probably going to be a very winnable fight for him. He's going to have the reach advantage here. He's a bigger guy. What would be interesting to me here is if Uros Medic tried to wrestle and grapple him, because I do think that, I don't think that that's very likely, Narco, but he trains at a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school, right? He is a guy that I think is going to try and change his game a little bit at 170, because I don't think he's going to want to stand with these guys that are bigger and longer than him at all times. And so I do think that Semelsberger, just like we saw with Wells isn't the best wrestler of all time, right? He had a draw with Hafez, the guy who just got to the UFC against Jack Della back in the day, where they both exchanged takedowns a million times in that fight, right? So like, he's a guy that can engage in that kind of fight, get a bunch of takedowns, but he mostly does it on strength and physicality. Uros Medic, still a young enough guy coming up in weight. I don't really know what to expect from him, but honestly, barring that, I would tend to agree with you that I think that Matthew Semelsberger has some advantages here. I believe he's from Fredericton, Maryland, but I think he went to Marist College, I believe, and played some football. So we can give him the New York boys can teach you how to wrestle distinction as well in this spot if he needs it. But to your point, huge knockdown ratio in his favor in the UFC. Very hard to ignore in a weight class like welterweight. I was going to push back on you and say, hey, Martin Sano, these kind of, but then you look, and against Jake Matthews, 3 of them, against Jeremiah Wells, 2 of them, those are really good fighters. So I think that, some things to be a little bit weary of here, but I think Semelsberger a little bit more proven in the promotion and still putting his game together. So fun fight.
You mentioned the wrestling from Medic, like you don't see it on tape, and it's possible. You're right. He's at King's MMA, right? There's a lot of good grapplers there, whatever, that he can possibly wrestle. But I think short notice, and I honestly believe actually Semelsberger's actually a decent grappler. Yeah, Wells was getting takedowns, but man, Wells is super strong and powerful. Like, that guy has unbelievable strength. You look at Medic, you can't come off saying, man, this guy is very strong. He just doesn't really look that strong as compared to Wells, right? The other thing is, he's never, like I said, he's never been 3 rounds. He's at elevation. I just don't think that's going to be the game plan to wrestle here. For a guy that's never been 3 rounds, doesn't really wrestle, I think he might gas out in 1 round if he does that, right? So, especially if they're getting stuffed. So, yeah, I mean, it's possible, I guess. But I think the wrestling, honestly, if Semelsberger wants a very easy path, I do think he can wrestle. Because if you watch the regional scene tape, Medic gets taken down on his back a couple of times.
Yeah, I remember that in Alaska.
That's in Alaska FC, my friend. So it's like, I don't know how good this guy's defensive wrestling is.
Absolutely. So there you have it. Not a fight where I have a bet. I'm certainly not as confident as my guy Narco, but tend to lean towards the Matt Semelsberger side just a little bit. Does seem like he's getting a lot of public love. That's one thing that I normally am a little bit weary of. But overall, I do think that, he's got more experience. He's a little bit more proven, especially in the weight class. So
Mush of the week.
Yeah, he might be, bro. He could be, but it's yet to be seen. Saturday, we'll find out.
I hate that.
Indeed. Guys, shout out to the chat. People are asking if this is live. It's absolutely live. We're here rocking with you guys. It's 1:38 Eastern time, so we got 1 fight left to go. Want to ask everybody, if you could be so kind, drop a like on the video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns that you want to get off your chest, go ahead and ask them now while we still got some time. And we're going to break down this first fight of the evening. Miranda Maverick, Priscilla Cachoeira, 125 pounds. Women's fight should be good fun here. You got the MMA Masters representative, Priscilla Cachoeira, I believe, taking on Miranda Maverick here, who her Instagram did not come up instantly. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of searching around to find her Instagram. But in any case, right, Miranda Maverick's a girl, kind of dropped the ball in her last fight against Jasmine Jasuda Vicious. However, Jasmine wasn't really being given a lot of credit there. She's been stingy in a lot of her fights, very hard to beat, very hard to finish. And Miranda Maverick has fought to some of these close split decisions. They could have went either way. The one with Macy Barber, a lot of people felt like the wrong person won, but ultimately when it's such thin margins, it comes down to these, one or two exchanges that could sway it with the judges. And so that's not what you want to do. You want to make clear margins, especially when you're a big favorite. We got a big favorite price tag here with Miranda Maverick once again. And I understand that because she does have grappling upside here. She is a very physical woman. However, Priscilla Cachoeira, dangerous girl, 3 first or second round knockouts in the UFC. Very rare stat for WMMA purposes. She's bounced around a little bit in terms of weight class as well. Need I remind people, she went up to 135, knocked out Ariane Lipsky. Here she is back again at 125. So for me, there's a little bit of a question mark that I have, which is, how does she perform at 125? Is that going to cause a cardio drop off, especially at elevation? Is that going to cause a durability drop off for her? But I don't think that Miranda Maverick is the best striker. I think she's very one note at times on the feet. She likes to rely on her kicking and her elbows and things that are, kind of not tools that pair together great. Like a long range tool and a really inside tool. It's like, where's the middle ground? What are we going to do to bridge that gap? I feel like she's still working on developing that part of her game. She's young, she's smart, and her grappling is there. I think it's way better than Cachoeira. But I don't know if I want to lay the price. I almost feel more tempted to the under 2.5 here. I definitely took a hard look at that. Didn't play it yet, but when I see two girls that both have a path to a clear finish, right? I feel like, number one, Miranda Maverick could finish this fight via TKO. If you have a position dominant enough to submit, you have a position dominant enough to TKO. It's not a perfect science. Priscilla Cachoeira will take an ass whooping like she did against Shevchenko, but it wasn't like she wasn't getting dominated for every second of that fight. She was getting put on bad positions on bottom and just beat up. She didn't have answers for it. She's gotten a little bit better at that. She's continued to work on her ground game, but is it sealed up, right? Like Molly McCann last week, she's been working on her ground game. But when she got to the ground against somebody better than her, it didn't matter that she had put in a training camp and all this stuff. She got exploited there because it was a weak area of her game. Priscilla Cachoeira, the weakest area of her game is her grappling. And I think that Miranda Maverick will try and exploit that. But for me, ultimately, I just like violence here. I think both of these women need a finish to kind of reassert themselves as well. If you're moving to a new division for Cachoeira, I think getting a finish at 125 puts you right into the mix. And conversely, for Miranda Maverick, kind of had her momentum stalled out a little bit, right? She wants to get that back on track in a big way. I think the way you do that is finish Priscilla Cachoeira. Y'all must have forgot, and remind people how good you can be. So for me, I like violence here, Narco. What do you think?
I tend to agree with all your take on this fight. The one thing I will say is the 35 thing. Don't even look at it, Liam, because Ariane Lipsky, they had a fight booked the week before. She had a medical concern where it's something with the weight cut, and she asked for, because they booked her the very following week again. So she asked for 35 because she couldn't make 25 anymore because of the medical whatever issue it was. So she's been fighting at 25 for a very long time. I don't think it's a thing here. Not a big thing at all. But, I mean, the Gina Mazzani fight, let's talk about that, man. Like Gina Mazzani ragdolling this girl in the first round for, I don't know how many takedowns she had. I don't know, 6 or 5, whatever the hell it was. It was not a good look. Okay, let's just say that. Now, who's stronger, Gina Mazzani or Miranda Maverick? It's not close. And then the only reason Cachoeira kind of did what she did is because Mazzani completely gassed out in that fight. I don't know if you remember. She was like dead in the second round.
That's the Mazzani classic.
Yeah. And the thing here is can Cachoeira knock out Miranda Maverick, right? She has a lot of power. The thing I will say is Maverick is tough as nails. She's not easy to get out of there. Like, it's possible. Cachoeira hits very hard for women's MMA, right? And flyweight division. But the most likely scenario, I think, is Maverick just taking her down. And I honestly don't see Cachoeira getting up, man. Maverick is pretty heavy on top. She's a pretty freaking strong girl. And Cachoeira is just god-awful off her back, man. She does not look good. She's tough, You mentioned it, like she doesn't give up, right? She'll gouge your eye. She'll, fish hook you. She'll do whatever it needs to be done to get out of that position, because she did it against poor Robertson, right? But Robertson still got her, right? She still got her, even though she did all those things with like 1 second left or whatever it was. So like the problem is the grappling, man. It's honestly a huge gap here, and if Miranda wants to get a takedown, I don't see Priscilla stopping takedowns here. I really don't. And the issue is, like, once she's down, can she even get up when Miranda Maverick is on top, right? So, she has KO power. Maybe KO1 Priscilla Cachoeira or KO2. I don't know what it is, but, something like that. And like you said, maybe Maverick positional KO. I don't know even what the line there is, but it's probably pretty big. But yeah, I think under violence, one girl or the other stops most likely the big favorite. But no, do I want to lay minus 300 with Maverick? Absolutely not.
Not after what we've seen lately, certainly. But I think, it's a little bit reductive, but let's do a little MMA math, guys. We had Jillian Robertson, with the thumb in the eye, still find the submission on Priscilla Cachoeira. And we saw Miranda Maverick win the takedown battle there 3-2. Completely dominate Jillian Robertson in a lot of those exchanges. So physicality matters in WMMA, and it mattered in those grappling exchanges. I feel like Priscilla Cachoeira normally would be able to meet somebody with physicality, but I think technique for technique, she will be outdone here on the mat. So ultimately, that's what leads me to think Miranda Maverick bounces back here, gets the job done. I think Jasmine presented a lot more problems. Jasmine's also massive, very big girl for the division. So I think her physical dimensions made it a lot harder for Miranda Maverick to dominate there. If you're talking to me, Narco, you were muted, but if not, no worries at all.
I'm talking to my son.
Okay, beautiful. So shout out to the chat here, guys. We got our guy, Rick the Ruler, says if this line keeps getting crazy, he might take a shot on Zombie Moneyline. Def curious what the prop looks like on the KO. Interested to see that as well. So for me, seems like the chat, myself, yourself, we're looking towards a little bit of violence here. Obviously, Cachoeira, tough girl, so it's going to be price dependent. We're not just going to rush into it, but I saw a minus 110 on an under 2.5 yesterday. I have to see if that's still around, but just like that seems like a good price to me in a fight where I expected to end inside the distance more than 50% of the time, at a decent clip. But either way, we've done it, guys. That's every fight on the card broken down. Our first look perspective. My guy Narco, thank you so much. Brought in that tape study analysis. I came in with my preliminary gut feelings here, and we're going to circle back on Thursday. I'm going to be back for bets and banter, give you guys my educated opinion after I've done some more research, after I've done the tape study myself. But shout out to Narco for giving us some good spots, getting us ahead of the game a little bit here, and also helping me talk through these fights. So thank you very much, my brother.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. A little impromptu. I was going to do my own one tonight or tomorrow, but then when you asked, I'm like, yeah, let's just do it here. I'm leaving to Vegas on Thursday, so I'm going to watch Errol Spence versus Terrence Crawford. So that's going to be a banger, man.
I got to ask you, Narco. I know you're a boxing guy. I know you got the background. Who are you liking in that fight? Are you taking any action on the event?
I have a big bet.
Which way are you going?
I have a very big bet, mid four figure bet on Terrence Crawford.
Oh, shit. Big Bud Crawford fan here. Capping service. Shout out to you, brother. Truly appreciate the support, the dono, my man. God bless you for it. Thank you for the support. But I'm telling you one thing, Narco. I've been tracking. I don't know boxing as well as I know MMA, right? I'm a grappler first. I kind of come from a wrestling background too. That's the way that I approach these things. And I was looking at this from a market standpoint. I was like, let me track how this fight moves over time. And it's been one-way traffic, right? It's just been slowly drip moving towards the Crawford side here. And a couple other things I noticed, guys, for whatever it's worth, I did share this on Patreon as well. It's like a snapshot over time of the market for over a month of how it's changed. And you see the best available prices, dropping pretty significantly on a couple of the props as well for the Crawford side. So won't give away the whole game there. Y'all could do a little research if you want, or hit me up if you have questions. But just in terms of how I've watched that market move, I think, a lot of sharp guys who are taking the bigger investments are probably on the same side as you. And Errol Spence, fun guy, going to bring the action, big name as well. But when they're hanging at some of the sharpest outfits, the plus 150s, and, they're constantly above the market, that's what you've seen. like Bet Online.
Red flag.
Yeah.
Red flag. They're baiting you.
We do have one question here, which was what line did you get on Crawford?
Minus
comfortable sharing
minus 138 on FanDuel. I got.
That's a beautiful number.
I think it's still not bad on.
You did mute there for a second, brother.
Oh, sorry. I think I said I still think, yeah. Currently on FanDuel, you could still get the best price on the market at minus 146. So I still think there's value there.
You know what's fascinating, Narco? They have actually had the lowest number throughout this cycle. So a book that, in my humble opinion, is not as sharp as these other books has been giving you a good price on this, sharp side, whereas most of the sharp books are begging you to take the other side at really generous numbers. So always something you want to keep in the back of your mind. It's not a perfect science, but when you're trying to predict outcomes here, getting on the side of the bookmaker is how you profit more long-term than getting on the side of the public, right? It's just a pretty standard practice. But Narco, I wanted to give you an opportunity, brother. Please tell the people where they can find you. I know you're headed to Vegas this week, but you do a lot of great content. The Lambo Plays podcast, one of the very best out with our guy, Timothy Troiano as well. Great guys in the space. Two guys that are giving out a lot of great information for free every week, which I know the people appreciate, the people of the community. So God bless you for it, man. The spaces as well. Just let the people know where they can find you if you don't mind.
Yeah, Narco Cop on Twitter, Narco Cop MMA on YouTube. No show this week, though. I'm going to be gone, like I said. So I do the live spaces for every fight card. But again, this week, I'm taking a week off. I'm enjoying my little weekend there in Vegas, watching the fights. Also going to watch UFC 291, of course. So, yeah, it's going to be a great week. And I always want – one thing I always say is, like, I shout out the chat because, honestly, Liam, me or you, we wouldn't even be doing these without them, right? If there's no one in chat, no one watching this, why are you going to even do it, right? So, shout out to them, too. Without them, there's no shows.
Absolutely, brother. I say it each and every week. I truly feel humbled that we have the sharpest chat in the game. A lot of great people show up week in, week out. New people pop in all the time as well, dropping their knowledge, dropping their perspective. We appreciate that as well. So, guys, if you have more to say that we didn't get to in the show, no problem. Go ahead and drop that in the comment section below. I'll make sure that I get back to you before the fights take place on Saturday night. Something I'm very active about doing is responding to those comments. Want to make sure people feel heard as well. So if you guys got questions, comments, concerns, fire them away at me. You can find me everywhere, guys, at LiamPicksFights. Go ahead, Narco, please.
I'm sorry. Inwa by decision, plus 350. He's asking. I bet it today. Right before the stream, I was telling Liam, I bet him by decision at plus 350.
I love it. So now, guys, we got 2 free boxing plays as well. If you want to get some DJing stuff rolling in the morning on a Tuesday, then you get our in-away play going on the decision with our guy Narco. But if you want to get going on Saturday night, one of the biggest boxing matches of the year, of the calendar, of the last 2, 3, 5 years. I mean, it's a very big fight this weekend. He's going to be there. God bless you for it, man. Huge, fun fight. And I'm wishing you the very best. I hope that you enjoy that. But we got a great combat sports weekend. So if you guys want to hear more about any of these specific events that are coming up on Saturday, make sure you drop that in the comments below as well, and I'll try and circle back. But there you have it, guys. The first look is in the bag. Come back for bets and banter. We're going to have all the same fun again. And make sure that you guys enjoy UFC 291. It's going to be a banger. God bless, guys, and we'll talk to you soon. Take